And do pipeline down the canyon, they don't have, but the other high end, the interest says have been developed.
So it's less than all that.
That's makes good of them. They're 65 gallon drums.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I think that
Like
these
one inch,
nerves
probably
are
five,
arteries,
probably five,
because if they get
running out of them, they've been there so long, that the sun is eating the
they'll
pipe
start
up. It's just
doing
gonna
weird
go
things.
still.
This fire, yeah.
and they'll
And
cause
she thinks that we can
the big
go there
strokes,
and
big
tie into those
strokes,
springs and develop them.
They didn't
Same
seem to
fashion we did the other two.
Yeah.
And then take the water and out of those.
I'm doing
We can
12 over 7.
We gave her a
That's like-
document that said that we
you
would
probably have
pay
some.
her water.
Yeah. Yeah.
She wanted
Yeah.
to separate
Most
easement
people
off the ground.
carry a little extra weight.
We're not in charge of the easement, it's the government.
That's my dad's
easement,
exact.
bring
My
one
dad,
pipe
yeah,
down through there,
67,
and,
and.
but we can put water in it, and so we can put yours in it, but we may know that go to those springs and try to convert her, transport her water over. to
Yeah,
the site.
Overworking, but yeah.
I should ask you for an easement right away, that's what
I think that's part of it, and I think that'll come out.
Yeah, it's been kind
And
of
they
a.
didn't find any acres from MCT.
They did it, oh, I
Because
remember,
we had
I
to
was
do a
out
rain
here
change,
still.
and the doctor said.
We're going down Monday.
Are you?
It was really
Couple
nice
Christmas?
because we got right.
No.
Yeah.
This is from, Las Vegas. 30
I know.
years ago.
They're holding Dallas. Yeah. Vegas, we do.
Really?
Standing and all.
You were
here to stay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
They volunteered.
I looked at it too, and I thought.
But you know, Texas, Oklahoma, and Florida, I've been to events.
Oh, we never.
I can see it.
When?
You know what? Are you gonna?
And so, I read through. it.
We have.
Oh, my God.
Everything. Okay, I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything.
Our banker.
I kind of feel like they get a cold chill. went through. That's funny, the financial,
We have a grandson.
Yeah.
No, we have a grandson. They basically said that they'll outgrow us. My oldest son started in at 2 years old. And he's 30, just turned 33. And so she's like, can't find anything other than. We do.
Well, if they tell me the arteries are okay.
Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, they're the south.
Well, we have.
Well, it's actually,
Christmas.
So we just want to.
They, Florida, Texas, and Oklahoma, and Florida can really look with it, in a far.
So we'll have to check.
Years ago. Yeah, they were within a half an hour.
I was gonna.
Texas.
So just sign.
Four stockyards, almost 10 yards.
Sign the next day,
Yeah.
we're just get on.
Yep. Well, it's just COVID.
I did talk to.
It's gonna be strange, you go to Wayne.
Yeah, he called Jerry Jorgensen.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
telling you.
He's talking about-
Trying to realize that.
But there's no back seat, just see
Now they're interested in that.
Yes.
Yes. I don't understand why they are.
We've got
something.
We're real sick around.
I don't understand.
Right, the people shoes.
I think that they did, so there's real education on their things, and Tom Hill was like, you know. Hey,
I come on,
I think we've gone.
Mom, a new road course.
Above and beyond having.
Never came to the new campus.
Conversations with us, I think, you know, so.
we ended up getting the money out of it, I guess.
Well, the one I looked at before you told me about yours,
We're gonna be.
he kept coming back to me.
Looks like we slow things down. Yeah.
But we were like,
Oh, yeah, you use mine horse.
This is really the stuff.
of course, you take the age and the dollar price, it's just who they be, and if they're mentally, they're great, but he was a little bit off center, so I kept slow
I actually talked to
He's
you.
probably good.
Everything else under control?
They gave me the exact
Yeah.
stuff that day, so I'm really, really. The department, I don't know. The state has, I'll tell you, the state work, you know, showing the brochures and stuff, because I guess.
I will follow up and push out.
Well,
Yeah.
gentlemen, I called Jerry and he said he'd try to be here.
This basin is closed itself.
Anyway,
That is the case.
You need the recorder,
good evening.
we need the recorder to go on.
Yes, do we have a recorder?
It's recording.
Oh, okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Big Plains Water and Sewer Special Service District. Each stand, we'll pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call starting on my left.
Ross Gregerson, present.
Harold Merritt, President.
Marty Listenby, present.
Dale Vettel, present.
Okay, consent agenda. The board meeting minutes from June. I read through them and as far as my recollection goes, they're fine. So I'll move that we accept the minutes, after you gentlemen have a minute to look over them, we could.
I'll second.
Oh, aye.
I,
Okay, the minutes are approved. Go on to, item B, July 2020 expense report. And the C, July 2020 operational budget report. I went through them and
Chairman, I made an error on the agenda there. This is for October and November. Expense reports for October and November.
for the expense report and the operational budget.
That's correct, yes.
And the money is out the door on the 85,000 on the payment. I think we're level with all of our payments, aren't we?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, good. That's the first.
You can see that payment on Utah State Division of Finance, check number 1043.
Yeah, that's good. I'll make a motion, we accept the consent calendar. I guess with the July 2020 expense report and operational budget.
That would be July and
No, it's October, November. That shows July here. Let's
Yeah, that's an error on the agenda. This is, so the operational report's up is current as to today, and then the expense report is October and November
okay.
for the month.
So the heading is paying part-time.
That's correct, yeah.
All right, I move that we accept the financial report. It's listed here as 7/1/2020. It's corrected to be 10/1 through November of 2020, and the expense report for October and November. Does that sound right? Okay.
I second. Vote? Aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. Staff report, Mr. Mills, has the engagement, and so I'll switch he and our water superintendent, so Rod, have you down here for 3 items. You can take them in any sequence and
All right.
address them as you wish.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. We were teasing back and forth. I wanted to go first because Dell always has all the great information. Maybe that'll change the time a bit tonight. So starting with the basin closure efforts, this is really just an update. Basin closures we are not a principal party in any of those kinds of actions. Those things are always conducted at the state level through the state engineer's office. But what we know at this point is they have, and for some period of time have effectively closed this basin to new applications, with the exception of a small corridor that runs west of, I believe the road is called, it's the dirt road, it's called Desert Drive. There's a small area that they are allowing to receive new applications on a essentially residential or small case basis. But that's the only area in the entire basin that they would receive a new application. Otherwise, the basin is closed to new applications.
What road was Desert what?
Desert Drive.
Where is Desert Drive? I'm unfamiliar with
You know where,
No.
you know, Main Street?
Yeah.
So, Deep Road's here, Main Street goes out here, it makes an intersection right there. This turns and goes back towards Coyote. That's Desert Drive that keeps going south.
Okay.
So it's essentially in the area where, toward the cut, where everybody calls it the cut.
Yeah, exactly.
That's essentially the area.
In layman's terms, this means that the average Joe Blow that has a water right and wants to drill their own well are not able to?
No,
What you're
that's
saying?
not what that is, no. If you have an existing water right, you have a right.
Okay.
This only affects folks who would be coming into the basin and making new applications for new appropriations for new water. None of that is possible, but this does not affect existing water rights. Okay, so any questions or anything beyond that?
Well, I guess the question, we brought this up at our last meeting, so there's no action required on our
No,
part, right?
no, and there never would be. We've always taken it on because we thought that we could support the activity of getting some more closure in the basin, based on the aquifer study that was done that demonstrated how much actual water there is in the basement compared to the paper water rights. And the truth is, we're over allocated, as are most of the basins in Utah. And so we just wanted to make sure that the state understood the situation and put the clamp down so that the problem didn't increase while we were on watch here. So we were just trying to support that effort, and that's always been what we've done.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. So secondly, the impact piece study. We just wanted to bring this back to the board. The study is complete and is ready to go, but because of the protocols that require us to go back to the town council for approval and so forth, we don't actually know what protocol we should use to get that in discussion, get it in review, get it in whatever the situation needs to be. And there should be some review. There was a second party review, as I mentioned earlier, through Zion's private financial services. But I think we could do an independent one. The numbers are high. Zions came back and said, oh my gosh, what can you do to get these numbers down? And there's all sorts of math and stuff that you can do, but this is the actual number. As best we can determine it based on the percentages of impact fees that would be collected in the next 7 years that would require expenditure in this time frame, and the one and only project that we've identified in this same time period. So the fact of the matter is, and I'm happy to I could give an entire presentation on the whole study and go through everything. But the gist of it is, the numbers are high because our district is really spread out. So any particular piece of infrastructure, a couple of miles of pipeline, gets spread over a smaller population base than what just about anybody else in a more in a denser area would experience. But the board has always looked at these impact fee studies and have tried to moderate those down to a reasonable number. So I think the worst case scenario for us, at least from my perspective, what I would be recommending is that we hold to the impact fees that we're currently assessing and do not consider raising them, even though the impact fee study would legally give you the right to raise those fees. I just don't think we should. And it's just a function of we're all spread out. There's 3 separate water systems that the district takes care of. The piping associated with that, when you do a head count, is we end up with a couple of people paying the bill for, you know, 400 or 500 lineal feet of infrastructure, as opposed to a few feet when it's more traditional development. So we're always, not always, for the next foreseeable future, certainly the next number of decades, actually, we're going to see these kinds of numbers coming back through these studies. We're just not spreading it across a population that is equivalent to the amount of territory that we're distributing water to. So I think as a bottom line, what I would say is, what the study does definitively do is it puts in a legal document that has been prepared by state code, under state code, that the impact fees that we're currently charging are legal, are appropriate for what we're doing. I think that's a big deal. Because anybody could come along and contest that at any time, and you'd have to go through this process of demonstrating that you did the study step by step appropriately to the state code, and that it met muster. And of course, the board will be dealing with a much higher number than what, again, I would personally recommend we review. So again, we're just bringing this up to discuss it with the board. And have some thoughts about how to move forward with taking some action on it.
Michael,
Yeah.
what is our current impact fee?
12,000 per equivalent residential connection, which also from a property perspective equates approximately to 1 acre. But we've done the math a little bit differently, and it's not exactly an acre, and it's not exactly a single parcel.
What is commercial impact fee?
The commercial impact fees are based on meter size and are also based on this same number for equivalent residential connection. What's the minimum?
Yeah.
Minimum what?
Minimum impact fee for commercial.
I think the minimum impact fee for commercial would be a single residential equivalent, which would be 12,000.
Okay.
What to do on the connection is just, if it's a 1-inch meter, 1.5-inch meter, the cost of the meter is just more. And that's how much more.
And that's all our influx is.
Right.
No, the impact is actually significantly higher than that.
The impact is based on residential connection. Like
Yes, it's based on residential connection, but the
Equivalent.
meters, yeah, they'll be significantly more expensive as you go up in size.
Because I like to be the devil's advocate, I'm gonna be the devil's advocate. You made a statement earlier that it's unfair sometimes that somebody ends up paying for 400 feet of pipe when typically downtown they'll pay for 200 feet.
Yeah.
Or 20 feet of pipe.
Right.
Tell me what's wrong with that?
What's
Why
wrong
is that a
with,
negative thing?
what's wrong with saying that?
No, why is it a negative thing to make someone pay for the 400 feet of pipe themselves?
If it's not adjoining their property and doesn't benefit them specifically and can't be demonstrated as a fair cost, it's inappropriate.
I think what,
are you talking about?
sorry?
What kind of scenario are you talking?
I think I understood you say something a little bit different. Let's hypothetically introduce a new project. I think Mr. Holmes is going through the application process to do some development right here behind along the freeway here for his project. In order to do that, he would have a significant amount of offsites to get to that site.
Correct.
Tell me what is wrong, based on your statement earlier, what is wrong with making him pay for that entire infrastructure in order to support his development?
So it's based on a per case basis. But if that development is the reason why that infrastructure is being required, there's absolutely nothing wrong with charging full fees for those, or having them install the infrastructure and having the district maintain and operate it going forward. We do that all the time.
So Ron,
Yeah.
when you say take action, do we need to take action, or is there action to it remains as it is?
Well, so legally, this board should adopt the impact fee study to make it a legal instrument. And then the board will have the obligation actually to set the impact fee. And legally, you can set it at or below the qualified number.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, that the board did accept the impact fee study
Yes.
and forwarded it to the town. Now, the
Right.
town can accept it or not, but if they accept it, that doesn't obligate anybody to change the impact fee. We as a board and as a town can say, the impact fee study says it should be 18,000 or 15,000, whatever it is.
Right.
We say we're holding the line at 12,000 where it is, regardless of what the study says. But if somebody comes back to us and says you're charging too much, we would have the backstop of saying we have a study in hand
Right.
that proves that it's a legitimate charge.
And at that point, it becomes a public document under public scrutiny. Anybody could review it. All of that can be done. And it's actually helpful. It reduces some of the questions about, is this an appropriate fee or not?
Mr. Chairman. So my understanding, if I go back a few months, the only complaint we had in the town council level was that there was not a scope of service. In other words, we had said, yeah, let's go ahead and do an impact fee study, but there was nothing written that said, here's what we're doing, here's what we're paying to who we're paying it.
Right.
And it's normal in an engineering, I know I get those all the time when we're doing it. They lay out point by point by point, who's doing what for what.
Yeah.
That was never given to us. You passed on, yeah, we want to do this, but there was no paperwork. All we were asking for months ago was, where's the paperwork? We can't approve to say, let's spend 10 grand, and we have zero paperwork to go with that check. That's all we've asked for.
Right.
From months ago.
Right. And
to
all I've
clarify it,
said-
we haven't.
all I've said to counter that
Hang on a
is,
second.
sorry.
Hang on a second. And you mentioned that you had forwarded the impact study to the town. It's not the study, it's just that you want to hire him to do the study. That's all you forwarded to the town. It's not the actual study. Because we don't,
Correction, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, I just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all the thing that I was questioning is, where is the paperwork that goes with that, that says that here's how much we're trying to charge by
Right.
If it's you, by Bank of America, whoever it is we're writing a check to, we should have paperwork that goes with that check. And that was my complaint from the
Right.
get-go, along with a couple others that you remember.
Right.
Well, isn't the scope, the state requirements that you
Right.
followed, and that, I mean,
Yeah.
if you just copy that.
And that's essentially what we had done and why there wasn't that specific piece of paper. We agreed on paper to provide the service for X number of dollars and meet all of the state requirements per their public scope.
Verbally, but we haven't seen the paperwork on it that would go on our files that authorizes us to write a check when it comes time to write a check.
Yeah.
That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay, so we'll get that boiled down and get it,
And we're putting together our
But that,
agenda right now, so if you want that on the agenda, let's get the paperwork, we can add it to the agenda.
but that would come, we're paying for the impact study, are we, or the town?
Well, the district would be paying for the impact study. And that's the agreement. That's my agreement.
Well,
But the town has to approve the payment.
Correct, so recommendation to the town that.
Right. Right. And I think that's where the hang.
Okay,
okay, well, we'll get that paperwork squared away and request that be on the next agenda then. Would that be appropriate, Rod?
Yeah.
Have it ready by then?
So I can just print out the state code and that's the scope we follow.
Okay.
We're accompanied by the study.
Well, the scope of service, what I'm looking for on there is, here's what we're doing, which could be that paperwork you're talking about.
Yeah.
And here's who's doing it. We're gonna pay Rod or whatever the engineer company that we're writing a check to. And
Right.
here's how much we're gonna be charging.
Yeah, I understand. I haven't
That's
tried
all.
to be resistant to all of that. It's that the entire discussion started after the study was all but finished. And it is now finished. To me,
That's
it
not
makes
my
more
problem.
sense.
But therein lies the problem, Ron.
That's
Yeah.
not my problem. The problem is
Understood.
we never got that to
Right.
approve it. And so, you know, if it. doesn't get
So,
approved, that's-
for clarity purposes, you want before the town council, the scope of work from the state code and an agreement to sign?
No, it's a scope of service of the engineering firm that we're writing a check to, so.
The
I
scope
agree.
that I used is the state code.
No, I'm gonna be blunt, Rod.
Yeah,
I don't mean to be rude, I only mean to
Right.
be blunt. The work was performed by you and others.
right,
And then we were required to pay for it. It
Right.
doesn't work that way.
so you're
You
not,
ask us for the approval first before you go do the work.
understood.
no,
That's clear. Yes, it is.
no,
Yes, it is.
the board is paying for this.
I don't care if the board's paying for it or not, as city council has to approve it, and we're not gonna approve it until we first see the scope of work and authorize it.
We got it.
You
We
didn't.
got that.
You didn't.
I said, I got
So
that
I was
understanding.
as blunt as I could be, and I wasn't trying to be rude, but.
Understood.
Let's get the point.
Yeah, I think we're all.
Okay, so move on to item number 3.
Okay.
So the Canaan Springs project, the contractor has been on the job. Things have gone extraordinarily well. Everything is looking super good. We don't have, the project is not anywhere near finished. We have completed stabilizing the spring development itself. And now we've got to get them back on the mountain to get the pipes connected and to get the water back in the system and to get all the approvals, the safe water stuff and all of that program. And we have sufficient budget for all of that going forward. So the long and short of it is everything is going really well. We have a mountain of paperwork that is always required by the federal government because this is a grant. It's a grant for source development. I should say, I got to get this more precise. Source rehabilitation based on damages from a previous catastrophic event. It's a very specific grant program. So there is literally a mountain of paperwork every time we step in it, and we've got a bunch of paperwork to follow up, including some of the initial reports. We are waiting on one piece of paper from the contractor certifying that they are using American-made products only, and that is a requirement of their contract. And it's a requirement of our contract. And we haven't got their certification back. And that potentially could hold up moving forward with some other parts of the project. But at this point, we have the time to get that process to go. There will be an attorney's confirmation of that document as well, and that's in the queue also. So we're kind of at a paperwork stage, actually, on the project overall.
I'm impressed that you actually remember that title.
I probably got it wrong. It's crazy. Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, the fact that the government has a program like this and we were able to take advantage of it is it's just a beautiful thing. It's probably going to be one of the most memorable projects in my entire career, in truth. And the contractor has performed marvelously, has followed every instruction to the letter, has been very careful with their work. It's just so far so good. We're all still crossing our fingers because it's still a construction process, and there were some changes that were required from the original design, which is very typical of springs, but the contractor's been super cooperative with all of that. And it's just gone really, really well.
Do we have an idea yet what the flow rate is going to be? What we're going to capture?
Yeah, I think we do. Order of magnitude, we're getting in excess of 40 gallons per minute. We actually expect, as the spring stabilizes, that we might actually get even a little more than that. But that is consistent with the historical flows of this spring, even though the truth is, we're going to be the first ones that are actually getting real data on what the flow is. It's never really been measured in this way. Part of our project does state requirement, and the state and the federal government are both in on this project. They both have requirements that we have to meet virtually every day. The state's piece of it is again, going back to the state code for how a spring is developed for potable water purposes. So there's a whole bunch of requirements that we have done. We've met all of them, and we have their approval based on the construction drawings. There will be an additional conversation with them when we go back to ASDAS, because not everything on the mountain went exactly according to design, which again, we anticipate on springs. It's not quite as simple and as clear as a pipeline is typically. So we anticipated some changes, and there were some.
So what do we think the combined flow with the other?
Gosh, I think it's going to approach 100 GPM.
Or a little bit more, I think.
Yeah.
I think we got 70, 80 coming out of that other.
Yeah.
spring.
Yeah, we're super juiced, and that's a slang word to mean really excited and really happy about what's happening on the mountain. The truth is, every time you cut into a spring like this, you take the risk of losing 100%. That the water will you'll hit a rock and it'll move something somewhere, and you'll never find the water again. I mean, it's risky, it's scary. I've been on pins and needles since the very first bucket got taken out of the hillside, but it's gone extremely well. I would even say I feel blessed, actually, with how well it's gone so far. It does feel like Providence is smiling on us a little bit. It does.
We have water we've never had before. As you drive up the road to the Cannon Ranch, you're in mud now. That's coming down and overflowing the gas ponds and overflowing the tank and just nowhere to go. Yeah. And so as this thing, we get our arms around it, it's developing much better than I thought it would. It's just
The water's just delicious how it's good water.
We'll be back to the board with some more infrastructure conversations, just based on ability to afford things. But based on what we're getting out of the sources, we actually do need some supporting infrastructure, particularly storage.
Yeah.
We really need to get some additional storage in that area, so we're capturing more of the water that we're getting literally out of the mountain.
So I might add that this water overflow is in addition to servicing the town of Canaan now.
Right. Yeah.
So that all of our customers are being served and we're still a walk to
Yeah.
in water that we can.
Yeah.
Watch that, go down the drain.
Yeah, well, in truth, I don't look at it as completely wasted, because a lot of the water that we're extracting from the basin is coming from groundwater that is being contributed by these kinds of sources.
Sure.
So it's not all 100% a disaster that way, but yeah, it's certainly not the most efficient way for a water program to be getting its water. So we're looking for even brighter days in the future.
It's looking good. I understand the contractor who pulled off for a few days is not particularly in a hurry, but they want to be back sooner rather than later.
Right.
They wanted to give it a long time to stabilize, make sure the flows stayed the same and they knew what was going on. And now the next phase is to run the pipe out of the canyon.
And I've been really supportive of a little bit of a stabilization moment, a little bit of a stand down, if you will, just to see if we can get some of this paperwork to catch up with us. So it's all good, actually, from my perspective.
Any questions? Anybody has one?
No, Ron, thank you. To get this done this fast, I'm amazed. Government doesn't move this fast normally. So thank you for the effort that you put in.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a nail biting, hair pulling experience overall, but it is so rewarding to get to this kind of a place and have something that really this whole community is going to benefit from for as long as we can foresee. Yeah, pretty exciting stuff.
Well, great, appreciate it very much. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us, Rod?
I think that's got the most of it. I did want to mention that Carol Lee Farrar has recontacted me. They're the folks that bought the parcel that they wanted to divide into 9 residential units. We have been open about the discussion related to their infrastructure. Going back to this original discussion, is going to be quite expensive. They have to get across the highway to service their property in order to meet the basic fire flow requirements. Well, once we're across there, the truth is there will be other people who will benefit from this connection. So there's been some discussion about how do you fairly allocate this infrastructure that their development needs and has to have to move forward, but other people will ultimately benefit from going forward.
Pioneering agreements.
Pioneering agreements. And so we're just talking about what the nature of the pioneering agreement should be, how many parcels we should pull into it, and what's specifically involved in that. So we're just getting some discussions with them. In my opinion, the best direction for the district to be is to not have any pioneering agreements at all. They can get dicey. But in this particular case, in order to be fair to all parties involved, we have to come up with something. So we're gonna figure something out that feels fair to everyone as best we can, and we'll put it out there and we'll see what happens. A lot of water districts have had so much bad experience with development agreements and particularly pioneering agreements that they've just canned them. If you need the infrastructure, you put it in, and if somebody else benefits from it, we thank you very much and we move on. To me, it's still, and I've said this to you guys at the board level and also to the Farrars, it just doesn't feel super fair. to just leave it that way, especially in this situation where they're getting across the highway for us.
Would you be willing to, or have a member of the board, whatever you think would work best, get in touch with the adjacent property owners and see if they would be interested in participating in this, because their property is going to benefit vastly.
Right.
And if everybody could come up with some sort of a formula, does that approach sound reasonable?
Yeah, I'd be happy. I've had to become familiar with the parcels that are adjoining this area just to see what a pioneering agreement might look like and who might benefit. So I'm already somewhat familiar with sort of the territory. I'd be happy to take that step if the board is comfortable with that.
Would members of the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was going to suggest if we jump off into that there's two things that we could consider looking at. And one would be Rocky Mountain Power. They have a limited amount of pioneer agreements that they do when someone's paying for an extension. And they really limit how much they're going to pay back of that extension to someone. And we might want to follow that kind of model to where, okay, yeah, you get a little bit back, but it's not a forever and a significant amount.
Right.
And the other one that's doing those is, from my understanding, was the sewer district.
They do so. They do.
Ash Creek?
Ash Creek. Ash Creek is doing those. And so it'd be a pretty simple phone call, I think, to get some information from them on pioneer agreements. You know, what percentage do you let come back and for how long and who manages it? We could ask a few details from them of how they structure it.
Yeah.
And because they're already experiencing some of the pitfalls of that, I'm sure. Yeah. And we could probably be a quick study and learn from their experience right off the bat.
Thank you. That's really good advice. I have talked to Ash Creek. Theirs is going to be a little different than ours, but I like it. I think I should go back and do that if you guys.
That's what we're going to copy it, but it'd be
that
informational.
additional step.
In fact, they might have an agreement actually they'd hand you and then get you head the right direction.
I agree. It could really give us a jump start.
Yeah. So what's the area, general area where we're talking?
So the 9 acres is most of the way to Canaan Springs. It's on the far side of Cedar Point. Is that right?
Right straight across the road from the waterfall feature. In fact, we're gonna come straight, that's where the connection's gonna be, is right off to the edge of that and then across the street.
So would we anticipate the size of pipe, if we're gonna bore under the highway, do we want to oversize that pipe for future?
Yes.
It's a 10-inch right now is what it's drawn at.
Right. Right, and 10-inch will service the foreseeable. They don't have to have a 10-inch to meet basic requirements. They only need an 8. So there's already that issue, but we typically handle that aspect. A betterment is what that's called. A betterment on behalf of the overall system. We handle that as a credit to their impact fees. So that would come out as a direct credit. The rest of this is the bill would ultimately get paid by other private property owners who benefit from that from that pipeline being in place. And the district, as far as I'm concerned, I want the district to be a party to these agreements to make them fair, but I would prefer that we aren't even legal and we're not legally involved in them. I don't want the district to have the possibility of 10 years from now, nobody has stepped forward, nothing has happened, and yet we have this pioneering agreement. They haven't been reimbursed anything, and they're mad about it. And now they're seeking remedy through a lawsuit with the water district. I see no reason to put the water district in that kind of a spot. We don't have to do it that way. We're just trying to be fair. That's all. But I do not want to increase the district's liabilities here.
Yeah.
So it's a careful step.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I remember, I'd have to refresh my conversation probably with our attorney, but he was also mentioning, the pitfalls of these pioneer agreements and at the same time admitting that, based on our situation up here, it's probably not a bad idea.
Right,
They just don't do them up down St. George because of the size, and they can get away with it,
right.
but he had mentioned that, you have to be careful how you word these, because not just, you're thinking of liability if we don't get involved at all.
Right.
But at the same time, you could be, having the same effect by not being involved, because now the guy's suing you because you're letting someone connect who hasn't paid him yet.
Right.
And so so that could throw us in the middle of it anyway,
Right.
because, and so being involved to some degree could be the right answer.
Well, being involved is the right answer, because we're the entity that will create the environment of getting this to a level, fair playing field. What I'm alluding to is I do not want to be financially obligated in a transaction involving two separate private property owners.
Yeah, well, he just had mentioned that, I believe even Ash Creek does it this way, where they charge a maintenance fee right up front. So, the people that are having the agreement have to pay like $1,500 to us up front, because the bookkeeper in there is gonna be the guy that's managing, delving out the money, kind of a thing, because we need to know that, first off, we collected the money, we paid the money, so that way there can't be an argument later that, well, he didn't pay me the right amount, or,
Right.
you know, that kind of thing. And so
Right.
having your fingers in a little bit, or probably even a requirement where
Oh, yeah.
we're managing the book, so to speak, on
Yes.
this. And we charge a fee for doing that for, given period of time. So.
Yeah, the other possible approach is to actually create a special service district specifically for this project and the area that we define as benefiting from it. And those are problematic as well. Right now, we're thinking that a basic pioneering agreement might be the best way to go. But I would be happy to do some more due diligence if that's at the pleasure of the board.
Yeah, I'd suggest, did you have something, Dale?
Oh, wait, agree.
I'm just gonna suggest that we go back to the mayor's thoughts on this and talk to Rocky Mountain Power and Ash Creek and see what unfolds from there.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Just get some advice first,
Yeah.
and then Dale has some experience too.
I'm currently involved in 2 pioneer agreements and 3 development agreements. There is a simple way to augment the pioneer agreement, which does have hair on it, and that's to move it back to the development agreement. In my development agreements currently, we have a simple one-phase agreement with the city of Hurricane, for example. In our as in lieu of the pioneer agreement, in that agreement, I can't collect fees from you're talking about liability to landowners, you taking on liability. By statute law, that's actually illegal to do. The city collects, or the district collects the water impact fee from the new, and then pays that back. So there is no argument between the 2 landowners. Whoever's providing the will-serve letter is the one who's responsible for collecting the redistribution. You can clean it up even more so by going to development agreement that simply states that, one, if I have a cost today of $500,000 water line, and you ask for me to go to 8-inch, a 12-inch, or even a 10-inch, you are in fact responsible. This district is responsible for the upsizing, not the landowners. You
Correct.
would be paying that anyway.
Correct.
The original 8-inch line is required to meet fire flow for my subdivision, but it's not required that quantity to service my residential community. If it can be demonstrated that pipeline can be passed and increased to include other properties and not lose that fire flow, then they are in fact responsible for the benefit of that pipeline too. So again, it comes back to the server of it in the development agreement, and you can avoid the hair on that comes with a pioneering agreement, because pioneering agreements can be open-ended and they do go on forever. So you can clean up the simple development agreement.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like I've got some good advice.
Okay, well, let's, Dale was mentioning that perhaps they'll be in touch with us, or you can get in touch with them, and if we need to group think with them, or if you can put something together that makes them happy and present it to us, and let's go with that.
Mr. Chairman, one more thing. Is it reasonable to suggest that as you put in this research time, that the bill goes to the Farrars, because you're doing this on their behalf or for them, not necessarily for us. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable.
Work out
I can
something
throw that back
one-on-one
out
with
to
them.
them. Yeah,
And then that way they
Yeah.
know, okay, to research this is gonna cost you this much, and
right.
to execute it could be this much, and because even when we get this, that far, you know, they're gonna have to end up, I mean, you're talking probably, based on my experience, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 minimum, probably get an attorney to actually write the agreement up.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, this is, when they start looking at, I've got to spend all this money to bring this water across, and another 10 grand
Point
to
taken.
get an agreement in place,
Yeah.
because the reality is it could be that.
Point, yeah, that's an excellent point also.
Anyway, just something to keep.
Yeah, get it out in front of them. I certainly would be happy to take that to them.
I mean, yeah, you're assuming that they have a problem paying for a boring. A boring only costs about $150 right now, so I don't know what the width of the SR 59 easement right of way is. 80 feet, let's say
Right.
arbitrary, it's 80 feet. So you're only talking about $12,000, which is less than $1,500 per door for each house they're developing. It may not be an issue to them.
Yeah.
Well, it's,
So go
it's
to
the
them.
size of the pipe, I think, increased, and so the boring company increased their price significantly based on the size of pipe.
12-inch pipe today costs $150. I can show you the invoice of where they paid for 300 feet under the new SR7.
I have no idea what the other one was, so.
I was just gonna say, I talked to Mark the other day, and he said that this crossing is what's a make or break it for him for the, what's his name, Mark, yeah, for our, that crossing is actually the make or break for them on that, is because they're jumping through some serious hoops with UDOT right now for getting across that road.
Well, we could, we need to discuss that with them and since, yeah, we don't,
Yeah, let me.
we can't solve anything tonight.
It sounds like the board's comfortable just getting the dialogue going. I'll take that. I'll take the advice and we'll check in with those other utility companies and also point out the possibility of some additional fees associated with just making an agreement.
It's gonna take you a lot of time to figure that out, and someone's gotta drop the papers. and
Yeah,
Gotta have an attorney make sure it looks right. and,
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot to it, and it's gonna cost them like that.
it's a really good point. Yeah, they even discussed that.
AR. So, 2 Rs, AR.
Ferrari less than I.
I think that's all on my end.
Does the board have anything else for Rob?
No, thanks.
I like those socks.
Oh.
Well, thank you.
My guys,
Well, if you guys are headed off, appreciate your time.
yeah, my chauffeur will get me down the road.
Okay.
Be safe driving home too.
Thank you.
Yeah, watch out there.
So it probably won't be till after the first of the year that he gets all this done. He didn't tell you guys that he's got a right nerve embedment in his brain right now. So it's called a right nerve palsy. So he can't see. That's why I'm here.
I can make phone calls.
You can make phone calls.
And the guys at my office, we've been teasing back and forth, my mouth still works. And they're saying that that's the unfortunate result of all. Couldn't we have had that instead of this?
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, thank you.
See you, Roger.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris, water superintendent, thanks for deferring to the engineer, and
No
now
worries.
it's your turn to shine.
I want to elaborate a little bit more on the spring of what the importance of what actually happened up there, just not just redoing that spring. Before that slide came, that spring has been feeding since it was built, perking from the bottom with nothing, no pipe coming in whatsoever. So the whole time this spring has been running, there's been root intrusion that happens in the bottom of this. In fact, Harold can witness to this. I've stripped down to my underwear and tried to get into that thing to be able to remove it, which was always leaving us super susceptible, of course, to coliforms, because these roots are dying and coming. This has cleaned up that water source like you wouldn't believe. So there's a huge benefit of getting this more gallons out of there, but I don't have to do as much flushing, and more importantly, don't have to be working so hard to make that water so clean. So, and once again, Rod did an amazing job with getting all this together. And the PCI guys, I've been just amazed at what's happened. I've never seen a spring developed before in my life. And this has just been one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Just these guys clearing that out and seeing that water come out of the rock, getting it all in the pipe. It was a magical experience. Anyways,
Nice.
so the other things we got done was the cook well is now complete. We've got all of our drawdown information. Things running like a champ, holding at 35 gallons a minute. Want to thank Ross for doing a lot of the legwork and getting us hooked up with good guys that took care of us. Our equipment that we have now helps us out considerably. Of course, having a VFD and being able to read that drawdown enables me to fine tune those wells so we're not sucking air or the iron algae coming in and haunting us, so to speak. Got the Jessup well done too. Ross helped it considerably with that. We got a 15 horsepower in there. I ran it twice to waste since then. We've got to reactivate. If you guys remember, I deactivated that well because it was putting out stuff, so we wouldn't have to do any sampling on it during that period of time. And then I'll actually start sticking it back in the system. But it has cleared it up, so I don't know if it's the sand separator or it's just because it sat there for a little bit of time. But we all know that have seen that well run. I don't think you could get water any blacker when you fire it up. Now I'm only going about 10 minutes. Where the first when they brought it up, he was almost an hour and a half until that water cleared up. And we're getting a solid 35 gallons a minute. I would say after that, out of that. Over the last, it's been a while since we met. I put in 8 to 10 meters. Jerry's stuff is going in left and right over there for meter installs. Other than that, just normal everyday operations. I got my last thing of samples to take for all 3 of the systems. I got lead and copper that I've got to still do for Canaan, the quarterlies and the yearlies for all 3 of the systems, but everything's running smooth. Had a few water complaints over in Cedar Point when Matt fired up, when everybody fired up those hydrants over there. Come to find out, these folks just weren't there all the time, so they were getting some in their service line. So it didn't end up really being, a problem with our system, so to speak. But met with the Bang guys of, talked with Marty, talked with Harold on this. We got a lot of development coming down the pipe, a lot of main lines that are being approved for extensions right now. Shouldn't say a lot. We've got 3 that are happening, that are going on with the state, depending on what Farrars are going to do, Spenlove's, Pearson's. So it's been busy. It's nice to be busy. The district is growing from my perspective. So yeah, it's been nice.
Have you heard anything from the people on that pipeline going down Coyote last little bit?
No, that's the Bang. Just since I met him in the field, I haven't heard anything.
I can talk to that if you mind.
No,
we do have a developer agreement in, I want to say in place. It's a developer agreement. They're a first draft. Our attorneys reviewed that draft. I've reviewed it again. We've made a few markups on it, and we're going to try and get together with them this weekend to talk over some of the finer points. And I feel like there needs to be something for the district in this agreement, and or a separate agreement with the district and them regarding, for example, fire. How many units can we build without worrying about fire service? And we've already been talking to UDOT, for example. They're not expecting this necessary, but a deceleration lane, UDOT's going to require that for even 20 cabins. And they're talking about starting out with 20. And now we're going to throw out another $100,000 bill. They've got to do a slowdown lane at Main Street at the new intersection there. And, but as far as the district goes, how many, as we're talking about a developer agreement, there's 150 master plan, let me back up and say that their original plan and design was 100 units on 50 acres. And so I said, well, we're putting this in writing. So is this the most you ever want to do if things were going great. And so we decided on 150 would be the most master plan, though they have no intention on developing that many right off the bat. But if we're going to be doing a developer agreement, at some point, we might just put some verbiage in there that this is subject to, you know, the district's discretion on the water needs, and then just take that off our plate and then let you guys deal with them when they come and say, hey, I want to build 20 more, 20 more, 20 more. You know, but at some point, it seemed like we need to get this in writing that, you know, we're okay to go to 40 based on a pipeline going there, but past that, now we need extra storage or connection to the other Cedar Point system for capacity, for fire flow. And so we all have to get our heads together, and because we're in that developer stage right now, the developer agreement stage right now, that depending on what you guys feel like the needs are, you know, today's the day we need to be having the discussion, not literally, figuratively, about what it is that the district and the fire and everybody else wants to see in that agreement. So that way we have this built in that, you know, yeah, we're okay with this up until this point, and then we have to trigger. And I just, you know, we've talked about this one-on-one where at some point then maybe that pipeline has to hook to the Ferraris pipeline, which comes back to the pioneering agreement. If we're connecting our pipeline from Coyote over to the Ferraris because of capacity, you know, we have to watch out for that developer agreement, or excuse me, the pioneer agreement, that we're not now one of the people hooking onto the pioneer agreement and having to pay a fee to do that.
That's a good point.
You know, and yet hooking onto that pipeline we talked about as a possibility which interconnects these two systems, but we were doing it because of the million-gallon tank and having the ability to have the storage capacity for fire flow as being the reason we would require that. But all this has to be communicated in some way to these guys. I'd like to see the project go forward, and maybe we let them go up to 30 or 40, whatever we feel like is the right number. And then past that, here's the next requirement. It's jumping off point that for fire, we might decide that we've got to connect to that for our pipeline. So we have the capacity for fire at some point. And so.
I think it'd be a great idea to get all of us parties in one room so we don't have any trickle down effect. And let's just all talk about exactly what needs to go on. So these
at what point? Exactly.
Exactly.
I am all for that.
Junior?
Yeah, so, the problems I see, well, fire flow is a big deal, of course, but, access is gonna be a big one for them. And I don't know if that's been brought up. I've never talked to them. I haven't been approached or anything. So I don't know if they've already got that in the works or not, but before we can even get into that, they have to have access. They have to have fire roads. They have to have that done.
That's all, yeah, that's a no-brainer. That's gonna happen all the way.
Yeah, I haven't talked with them, so I just hope that something.
Absolutely, it's road base at least, that's fire, not cinders, but a good road base road, right with.
Okay.
And then blacktop along their property line,
Okay.
at least, and then the next guy, when he develops something, we'll make him blacktop it.
Okay.
But I was absolutely gonna require that and a slow down lane,
Okay.
a deceleration lane, right where they just did all the interchange.
So they're gonna do it all the way out to the property, the fire road access?
Fire road access all the way, so it will not.
Yeah, that's a long ways. That's why I just want to bring it up, because that's a lot of road.
Right, it is. I told them, they wanted to put it on Coyote. I said, no, that's not gonna happen. And they wanted to pick Coyote because it's a better road.
Yeah.
I said, no, we're not gonna do any commercial roadway off of Coyote. You've gotta go to Main Street. And so that's the plan. And so they know they gotta make that fire accessible all the way.
Okay.
And then,
And they've got to come under the highway also on this one.
I think it's over by Harold's house,
Over by your-
come over the hill.
Yeah, they're most likely gonna need a tank over there somewhere, some more storage. You know, Apple Valley is growing at the rate that I penciled out the springs, and the springs would cover all of Apple Valley if it was hooked together. As it's growing, it probably will run a little bit short, but it'll take care of the lion's share once it's hooked into Cedar Point. But the bugaboo is that those springs in order to do that, run 24 hours a day and fill up tanks and storage. And then during the daytime, the tanks go down a little bit, so we're kind of doing this. So we need enough tanks in this thing when we talk about it to pick up the water that's being produced by the springs at night in order to have it available for daytime use or fire. So tanks are gonna be or at least a tank, a big one, part of this thing too.
Mayor, question for the mayor. I wasn't there, so when this came through, did we miss asking for a hydrology study with their project?
That'll happen when the plans are submitted, when he actually submits the plans.
Right, we haven't done all of that yet at all. He was asking for a cabin type of zone, and that's meant 500 cabins would be eligible on 50 acres. So that threw in the reason for the developer agreement, so we can limit him to 150 cabins on 50 acres. And that's kind of where we're at right now. We have not got engineering. I haven't seen the finalized drawings, the master plans. We haven't got that far along yet. But as far as the developer agreement goes and trying to finish this up, we could build in verbiage like that. I can invite you into the meeting with Sean because you have an expertise. In fact, I'll show you the agreement. Yeah.
Someone heck doing this?
No, I think it should be this way.
Ross, back me up.
No.
By the way, I think we need to make a motion to have Ross donate all of his time to continue helping as well.
He's a rock star in my book, for sure.
Anyways.
Well, all of the conversation we're having here is brought together and resolved in one hydrology study. And the hydrology study would dictate to us what they have to do in what stages.
So we've gone as far as doing the study, because we did that for, I can't remember those folks whose names were, that were gonna go there by Tex Thompson's. They were gonna run the water line through Eckert, there you go. And so pumps on would give us our fire flow, because we would need the storage for Eckert's to be able to do their project. But hydraulically, it showed that during pumps on, we would be able to meet that fire flow. Rod generally, we size everything, and anything over 500 feet, you probably know this, of developing stuff, has to go to the state engineer, and then that hydraulic study will be either done or checked by the state before it.
So it's gotta go there anyway, it sounds like.
I just want them to pay for the study, not us.
Oh, no, yeah, we won't pay for it, no. That'll go.
Should that be done prior to any developer agreement then? I mean, if we're.
Yeah, we'll need to know, exactly. Yeah, we'll need to know, and then, like I say, anything that's Paul Wright would be totally involved in all of that, actually, from the very beginning. The state engineer would be. That's a big project.
Well,
that's a lot of line, so.
Do you mind if I talk out loud for a minute? These guys are wanting to build 40 to 50 units in their first phase. And I'm trying to figure out it's a balance on, what you might call a small developer trying to put in, say, 20 for the first actual cabins that they put in and not completely squash this project. At the same time, we need to make sure these things are working. So there's this happy medium where there's a lot of things we can ask for, and then it just doesn't happen at all.
And we can absolutely do it in stages.
And so what I'm wondering is if the first stage might be that as a town council, we at least go ahead and approve his zone request. So at least he knows he's got a green light to move forward. The next step, which could be the developer agreement with the hydrology study. And because right now we haven't even finalized his zone request. And I think it would be in good faith, we need to give something, because you can't expect this guy to keep writing checks and still doesn't even know if he can build it or not. And I'd like to be a little more frank with the guy and just maybe have a conversation with you or Harold on these, maybe even fire, on what some of these concerns we have as we get bigger. And that way he knows what he's getting into on this whole project, with all of us agreeing that we know that this will be a good thing overall. and we want to encourage it at the same time, at these break points, we gotta have improvements to the systems to be able to handle fire protection, things like that.
That's the first sensible mayor I've heard in years. I don't want, I'm a developer. I don't want to see an overburden of a developer. I want to be an attractive community. I want us to be able to market ourselves and what developers come here and build under our landscape regime, realm that we have here. And we are attractive because of our landscape and because of where we're located, because of our mountain surroundings. And the reality of that is that should somebody want to come here and do a development project like this, there is some pioneering that has to go on with their projects. I've got a project right now where I'm 3.5 miles from utilities. I understand that when I acquire my ground, but I agree 100% with the mayor. I wanted to know that I had a project before I had to go spend a whole bunch of money. But at the same time, even to do 5 lots requires infrastructure for 150 lots, if that's your end goal.
Yeah.
So it's imperative that we know, as with a minimal amount of impact to the developers possible, what the end goal is going to be for us, because we only get one shot to lock him in to provide enough impact fees for the peripheral services that we're going to have to provide down the roads. So additional tanks and things and services that we're going to have, those impact fees are there to help us grow our community. We're going to need to know that up front. So there is some pioneering he has to do, but I agree 100%. I'd like to see as little burden as possible.
And getting good at these pioneering agreements will help even in this situation, as I think he's interested in having these people along Coyote pay in a little bit to that helps pay for that pipeline. You can't blame him, you know, he does the pipeline Coyote, and then all these people connect, and it seems like each one of them should have to pay a little bit of something, so.
I agree.
So us getting this information on pioneering agreements, what's fair on that?
I just throw up the red flag that understanding that the cost of the pipe, and we talk about pioneering agreements, understand that we can't give the farm away in the totality of the impact fee up front. We still need to retain 60, 70, 80%, whatever that arbitrary number is, in order to grow our community, and grow our services. So we can't afford to give them the entire impact fee. We have to give a portion of it that goes along. That's what I've seen happen in the past is, and we're in a pioneering agreement right now where 100% of the impact fee is diverted back to the developer. And Ash Creek just wrote a $4.2 million check for a new sewer line because of it. And it hurt them. And I don't want to see us get in a position where we work so hard to take care of the developer that we could take care of ourselves in the process and give away too much too fast.
You know,
Sorry.
we've become accustomed to being broke, and it wasn't, we don't want to do that again. So, yeah.
We need to make enough money so
We're just at this edge of the cliff where we're ready to just go,
yeah.
you know, not having any financial worries. So, I mean, give or take a year, I think we're going to be looking good.
Well, our power bill was pushing $4,000 last month. If the springs were connected in, there's $50,000 a year right there.
That's why Ross works for free. That's why I just said, let's have him donate all his time. Right? Yeah.
You gotta think at the gas station once in a while.
I'll buy him all the Dr. Peppers he can drink.
Dale, did you have anything else you want to share with us?
No, I think I'm good.
I want to thank you for your efforts on getting up and down the springs. Getting the equipment up there was a miraculous event right next door to parting the Red Sea. And then getting up there on a 4-wheeler, that was
harrowing.
We had that so churned up, we couldn't get up there with 4-wheelers. It was spooky.
But we'll end up with a fairly decent access though when they're done, won't we, Dale?
If it rains.
Huh?
If it rains.
Oh, if it rains,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, right now it's actually the worst, that hill. Like Harold was just saying, if you didn't have tracks there in the last week, wouldn't you say you weren't getting to the top? The last time that I took my side by up to get Harold, I barely made it to the top. The 4-wheeler 2 days before that about flipped right over on top of me. I couldn't get any further. things started about ready to fuck me off, that, what's his name, Milo's four-wheeler, he told me that the last attempt he went to make on his, he had to back down, so. Mine was the last
Will
one to
they
top
fix
him
any
out.
of that? Is that, can they?
As soon as we get some rain, it's just, their water truck's not gonna be able to get up there. It's just, it's taken the powder is like that deep.
Yeah.
It's up over your ankle. It's horrible, actually.
Yeah.
It's like being in sand snow.
The mayor has a horse.
Well, that's like the.
Okay, well, thank you, Dale, appreciate your effort and work here. Anybody, anything you want to ask me? Anybody?
No.
What do we have? Interesting.
Yeah, super. Okay, move on to, discussion and action, discussion on impact fees. The only thing I had there put on the agenda was to make it clear, if we got into a discussion of numbers tonight, make it clear to everybody, the impact fees are gonna stay where they're at. We're not gonna run them up. If we have a study that scares everybody to death, the impact. Have anything to do with anything. Then, to go on to item 4, purchase a standby generator. After having looked for a generator for a month and sending a mountain of generator information to Ross, he got tired of it and said, I have one. So I finally found one that was in his backyard. So he says it is plenty. Well, you can tell us about it if you wish.
Well, it's an enclosed unit. I just need a little bit of work on it, and it hasn't risen up to my action list yet.
So it's more volunteer stuff now.
Yeah.
Needs more Dr. Pepper.
It's 130 kW. It's a little bigger than we need, but for what we have, you know, it's the right voltage. It's enclosed. We probably have to come up with a trailer or something. In emergency, we could load it on a trailer and haul it somewhere, you know, if we need that. So.
And the maintenance on it is their exhaust gaskets? Or
Yeah,
nothing
yeah.
internal?
No, there's just some small stuff I need.
Ross, what's the weight on it?
This probably would weigh probably 8,000 probably.
Wow.
It's
So
a
you're-
heavy,
Trailer, and how big is it?
it's probably,
3 by 6?
no,
4 by 8?
it's probably 7, 8 feet long and about 6 feet high.
So you're gonna need a tandem axle at Kingsler.
Yeah,
I may have one that I could donate.
awesome.
Let me check to see
Okay,
Now,
if you go that route.
okay.
I told Ross that while we had a lot of things going on and the Canaan thing doing, and we just completed 3 wells working on them, I'd like to take a breath and maybe not buy a generator that we didn't really want. And he said, well, if anything happens, I got you covered. So that's where we're at. I'll talk to him about helping him put new gaskets in the muffler and stuff like that. But I guess the long and short of this, we do have a standby generator. If power goes completely out, we can keep Cedar Point and Apple Valley in water without any problems before we'd be in trouble. So we have a generator and appreciate that donation, Russ.
Okay, Dr. Pepper and a taco.
Final answer, final decision.
Does anyone else have anything they'd care to add? Are we good?
We're good because the mayor volunteered.
Okay, well,
Something else.
I move that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
I second.
Vote?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thanks, Dale.